Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well today. So I am back in my sewing room again today to make a summer dress, and I'm really excited about this particular dress. I saw a dress at Anthropologie, I think like 2 years ago, that I thought was so pretty. It's a polka dot wraparound style dress with puffy sleeves, kind of like a midi length. And I just thought it was so cute, but I've never purchased it. And I recently found some really similar fabric at Joann Fabrics. So I went ahead and bought some of that. And I thought I would try to recreate that with you guys today. So the pattern I'm going to be using is from By Hand London, and it is their Hannah dress pattern. I've gone ahead and cut the dress out, but I did make a couple of alterations I wanted to go over with you guys. So the first alteration that I made was to shorten the sleeves. Now I'm using the bishop style long sleeve from this pattern. There's a few different options in this pattern, but I went ahead and shortened it to about elbow length because I am going to be using shearing elastic to gather the edge to make it into a stretchy puffy sleeve. So I wanted it to be a little bit shorter, but still have some room to gather and get a little bit puffy. So I cut it to about elbow length. And then I also went ahead and curved off the front edges of the wraparound skirt. I just thought that would give it a really pretty drape, so I went ahead and did that. And then the only other alteration I made was to make my ties just a little bit wider. I wanted them to have more of like this ribbon bow type of effect instead of a string tie, which is more how the original design was. So that is what I've done to change this pattern to hopefully make it look similar to the dress from Anthropologie. So I'm really excited to go ahead and get started sewing. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. So to make this dress, I am starting by cutting out the pattern pieces, and as I said, I'm using the By Hand London Hannah dress, which is a simple wrap dress pattern. I'm adding a little bit of fabric to the neckline of mine because I wanted to raise it just a little bit, and as I said before, I'm shortening the sleeve. So here's what my sleeve pattern looked like once I shortened it, just so you guys can see that. And then I'm also cutting out the back piece here as well. Now I did decide to line my bodice on this pattern, which is not included in the pattern instructions, so I am cutting out the front and back pieces from some other fabric as well. Moving on now, I'm cutting out the back of the skirt as well as the pocket pieces and the front of the skirt, and the only alteration here that I'm making is to add that curved edge to the front of the skirt. And then lastly, I'm cutting out the ties, and for my dress I decided I wanted them to be a little bit wider, so I'm just kind of estimating the width that I want here and cutting out those tie pieces. So the first step to sewing this dress is to mark all of the dart markings and pin and sew those. So there are 2 darts on the front pieces and then 2 on the back of this dress, and since I'm lining mine, I am doing a lot of darts, so I'm going ahead and pinning all of those, transferring the markings using pins, and here's what it looks like once it's pinned. You can see it really gives a lot of shape to this piece, and I'm going to go ahead and do that on all of my bodice pieces and then sew these darts down. Now to sew a dart, you want to start from the wide end and then taper towards the other end, and don't backstitch, just sew straight off and then tie off your thread. That's going to keep it from puckering once you're done sewing your darts. So I am stitching all of these down with a straight stitch, and then I will just press them down flat. So here you can see how the darts have really given some shape to this bodice piece, and I just like to press them really flat so that it looks really professional and gets rid of any creases in the fabric. So now I'm going to work on attaching the shoulder seams of the bodice front pieces to the bodice back. So here I am pinning right sides together at the shoulder seams, and I will just stitch this down with a straight stitch, and I'm also repeating all of these bodice steps on the lining, just so you're aware. To make my ties, I start by pinning right sides together on the tie pieces, and then I will stitch all the way down the long edge and then point it off at the end to give it that kind of ribbon effect that I think is so pretty on a wrap dress. So I'm just stitching that down all the way to the end and then pointing it off by pivoting my needle. Then I'll trim off that excess and go ahead and turn these right side out. I'm using a knitting needle here. You can use whatever you have on hand, and then pressing these flat. So now I'm going to attach my ties to my dress, and I'm following the pattern instructions here, pinning one to the front of the right side and then one to the side seam of the left side. And I'm just going to baste these down so that they stay in place as I'm attaching my lining. So now I'm going to do my side seams of this dress. So I'm just pinning those sides together, right sides together, and stitching that down. Again, I am repeating all of these steps except for the tie steps on the lining. So now it's time to attach the lining to the bodice. So what I'm doing here is just pinning my lining with the right sides together to the bodice of the dress, and then I will just stitch all the way across the open neck edge. So after I've sewn that seam, I'm going to go ahead and do a technique called understitching on my neckline. I really like to do this because it makes the lining lay really flat towards the inside. It doesn't poke out and do anything annoying like that. So to do this, you just want to press your seam towards the lining and then stitch across the lining, keeping that seam underneath it, and that's what keeps it staying really towards the inside of your garment once you're done. I really like how it looks. It's definitely optional, but I think it makes clothes look just that little bit more professional. So here's what the neckline looked like after I understitched it and pressed it. You can see how that lining lies really flat towards the inside, and it just looks really nice and tidy. Bodice a little easier to work with since I lined it. I am going to pin down and baste my armholes together so that they're more like one piece of fabric, and now I can move on to the sleeve. So I'm starting by sewing the side seam, and then I'll go ahead and serge that seam and also serge the bottom of the sleeve. Next, I'm going to press up this serging for a narrow hem on the bottom of my sleeve and just stitch that down with a straight stitch. And then I'm going to move on to shearing this sleeve. I talked quite a bit about shearing in a recent video, but to do this, all you're going to need is some elastic thread that you wind by hand onto your bobbin. So here I'm replacing my bobbin with my elasticated one, and then I'm just going to stitch 10 rows of stitching with my stitches on the highest length setting. So I just stitch across with a straight stitch, and you'll see as you stitch your shearing that it starts to gather up more and more with each row of stitching, and you'll find that it even gathers more once you press it. So I really like this technique. It makes a really cool detail. It's not something that I ever thought I could figure out how to do myself, so I really enjoy experimenting around with it. I think it looks so cool and very similar to the original one from Anthropologie. So I went ahead and pressed my sleeve with a little bit of steam, and here's how the shearing turned out. I think it's so pretty and just really stretchy and a really cool look. So now I'm going to add the sleeves to the bodice, and to do this, just pin on your sleeve with the right sides together. So pin it into the armhole. I like to match up the side seams. That's an easier way for me to get it to match up properly, and then I'm just going to stitch that down with a straight stitch and serge off that raw edge. Pattern does include pockets in the skirt, and who doesn't love pockets in their dress? I know I definitely do. So to start, I'm just going to serge the edge on all of my pocket pieces and then pin them to the skirt pieces as the pattern indicates. So you have one piece for each of the front pieces and then two for the back piece. So I'm sewing those down and then also understitching those as well. Then I'm going to serge off the entire side of the skirt, making sure not to serge off my pocket. And now I can pin my skirt together with the right sides together and stitch all the way around, including where the pocket is. This is how you get that pocket encased in the side seam. So I'm just going to stitch that down, and you'll see here going all the way around the perimeter of my skirt piece around the pocket as well. So with my pockets and side seams done, now I'm going to move on to hemming my skirt. And to do this, I'm going to start by serging all the way around the lower perimeter of the skirt, and then just turning under the serging, pressing that down and stitching it down with a straight stitch. I know I've shown this technique a lot of times before. It's really simple, and I really like to use my iron to make sure that my hems are really crisp. So once my skirt is hemmed, I'm going to go ahead and sew 2 rows of gathering stitches along the top edge of the skirt and then go ahead and gather those up. Now it's time to attach the skirt to the bodice, so it's going to become a dress finally. So I'm going to place the skirt with the right sides together against the bodice and pin just to the outer layer of the bodice. I'm not going to pin to the lining here because I'm going to attach that to the inside to finish it off with a nice neat edge. So I'm just adjusting my gathers to fit to my bodice to make sure everything lines up properly, and then I'm just going to stitch this down with a straight stitch and then remove those gathering stitches once I'm done. So with my bodice attached to my skirt, now I'm just going to finish off the lining, and to do this I like to fold my lining in almost like a hem and then pin it down and then top stitch on the outside to secure it. I think this looks really nice and neat on the inside, and I always find it really secure as well.
Look ahead, the sea is calm, and I know we've been through a lot, but just wait.
So the dress is now so close to being done, but one final step here. I'm going to add a button and buttonhole to secure the wrap. This is different from how the pattern is designed, but I find this more comfortable to wear. So I'm going to add a buttonhole to the interior part of the wrap and then try my dress on to mark where a button should go to make it fit me best. So I am putting my button right about on the interior side seam, and I will just sew the button on, and then the button and buttonhole together will secure the wrap dress. So it buttons on the inside and then ties on the outside, which I find works really well and is really comfortable to wear. So with the button attached, this dress was done, and I was so pleased with how it turned out. I really love the style of it. I think it captures a lot of the original dress from Anthropologie that I was inspired by. I love how the sleeves came out. I wasn't too sure how they would work, but they turned out just as I was envisioning, so that was awesome. And I also love this fabric. It is so light and flowy and comfortable to wear. It is really similar to a linen, but without the wrinkle factor, so that makes it a lot more easy to wear on an everyday basis. And I don't know about you guys, but I find myself reaching for dresses a lot during these quarantine times because they just make me feel a little bit better about life. So I've styled it here with a basket bag and some espadrilles just for wearing in my backyard because I'm not going anywhere, but I think it looks really cute together, and I'm really looking forward to wearing it over the rest of the summer.
We are dreamers of the shore when we can't read the sky.
Alright guys, that is going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed seeing how I put this dress together. I was really happy with the final result. I think it turned out really similar to the original from Anthropologie, so I was excited about that. And I hope you enjoyed watching the whole process and going along with me while I was sewing it. Thank you so much for spending your time here on my channel today. If you're new to my channel, I would love for you to go ahead and subscribe by pushing the red button down below. That'll just let you stay up to date with my new videos. I have a lot of fun content coming up for you guys. We've got a thrift flip coming up in the next couple of days, so I hope you'll look forward to that and go ahead and subscribe so that you don't miss anything. And then if you've been subscribed for a while but want to keep up with me outside of YouTube, you can follow me over on Instagram. My username over there is just Lauren Johnson, and I would love to keep up with you over there, and I share a lot of behind the scenes of the different projects that I'm working on, so if you want to see them before they're posted on YouTube, you can check out my Instagram. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out on my channel today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!